Video 17G house power for generating plant. It's Sunday the 15th of September and it's a soft morning with a little bit of mist and almost a little bit of light rain by times, and I'm just going to burn this piece of paper here. You can see that there's just a very slight breeze coming from there, maybe slight east breeze. It's not really, it's just a twirl. There's really no wind. And at the moment Irish wind farms are yielding 1/8 of demand, roughly about 400 megawatts for a demand of something like 4,000 megawatts. And on Friday the yield from wind farms was 51, so it's something like a 40th or something, very small, for a demand of 4,000. And so they're making a very tiny contribution at the moment. But one thing which may not be known is, as I stand here beside the Rara wind farm, is that if you look carefully over at this wind turbine, you'll see the turbine there. It's stopped because it is not connected. But at the base of it here, there's a generator. That's a diesel generator. You can see it there in blue. As I twist around, you'll see possibly maybe a house up there at the top of the hill and on a nearby road, and that's about 580-600 meters away. So I just try to get my camera a little bit adjusted. Not always easy just out in the field. So we're looking at house power, and this is also known as Power City Power. And all generating plant needs to use some electricity from the grid. There'll be lighting and there'll be offices and electric kettles and things. They dispatch into the grid as a whole, and they use a little, but it's generally all very, very tiny. Now, this wind farm is costing 30 million euros, and this particular turbine, with the connecting cables and all the work, costs 6 million euros. So that field there in East Cavan grassland is worth about, at best, maybe 15,000 on the market, at best, and yet that can go 6 million worth of infrastructure into it. That's not that unusual, in that if a factory was being built on a farm or anything like that, it could go a lot of investment into it. But this is 6 million anyway, and all the carbon footprint of that and all the concrete, the base of it is 25 meters by 3 meters deep round, and we can see that it's a 2.3 megawatt, and if we work it out there by the hours and the price at a 22% output, we see that it should bring in 332,669, roughly 333,000 euros a year. So for a field to make 333,000 euros a year is not bad, and that then comes out of your ESB bill. So the diesel generator should give us an indication of that these wind turbines need power. And the reason they need power is to twist the yaw around, the top part around the nacelle, to keep the blades going at a low speed in order to stop them warping, to angle the blades to suit the wind. Onboard computers, sometimes the lubricant has to be kept warm. These are direct drive machines. Then there's all the conditioning equipment. There's lighting for aircraft, to warn aircraft. And there are a number of other uses for electricity. And in the winter time, they need to have heat into the blades to stop the ice building up and then flying off, and also to stop damage to the blades with frost. But it has been estimated one way and another that it can take 20% of the capacity of a wind farm to in-house power to supply it and to keep it functional. Now, I'm not so sure about this, but there is another use of parasitic power, and that is in these particular machines and many other ones. There's a wound rotor, and it is energized by electricity. Now, in the alternator of a car, it needs a start up from the battery, but then it generates its own rotor power, and there's plenty of power there to do that and still charge the battery. But because these wind turbines have that form of a rotor, there's an early stage of the wind speed that is consumed for that reason. Now, in some cases, and I don't know which it is here, they just draw the power from the grid, and they wait until they get enough speed for it to give an output, and then they get an output. But it doesn't make any difference whether the electricity is generated in the machine itself, or whether it's supplied by the grid. If it's supplied by the grid, it has to be paid for, and if it's used inside the generator, then that's taken away from the overall output. So I've looked here at an 8% as a rough example. Now, they say something between 5 and 20%, but I've just taken an 8% figure, which is very low. And we can see that that would work out at a bill of €192,413 to pay for that. And the reason is that while they're getting 75 pence, or maybe a little more, €75, sorry, or 7.5 cents a kilowatt hour, they're getting €75 a megawatt hour, they'll pay in the region of €200 per megawatt hour for power imported. My own household bill is 260, works out 260. So assuming they get a bit of a rebate, it's still 200. So that would leave a cost of €192,000, and this reflects in the report of the Glencarbury wind farm owned by John Lang PLC, because that's one of the few wind farms that you actually get the cost of sales separately, and it's very, very high. So there is certainly power being used by these, and it's just no harm to know it. And the presence of that generator there, which starts up now and again, and which is at all these wind turbines, is proof of that. There was allegations in some parts of the world that they were actually using diesel generators to make up for poor output and poor wind speeds, and that would hardly be economical, but they probably wanted to boost the load factor, maybe for selling or whatever other reason. I'm not saying that's happening in Ireland, but it's something to watch out for if you hear diesel generators running on a calm night. Now, these are Enercon E92 wind turbines, and they're designed for best sites because there's no gearbox. It's very hard to imagine how they could produce a useful power just going round a at that speed, but they do produce a little, but they're really designed for best windy sites, so they're in trouble straight away. The other thing is that they're the very same makers as used in the Bantir wind farm down in County Cork, and that wind farm lost a claim by 7 members of the Shivern family who suffered from the noise, and they had got an undisclosed sum, but it's believed to be substantial. It's big. You're talking into the teens and millions, and here's the very same thing here now going up here. So I would say they thought they might have been less noisy because there was no gearbox, but it may be other reasons. It may be the speed of the turbine or whatever that's causing the problem. So we wait with bated breath on that. The current capacity is 3,500 megawatts of wind, 3,500, and that reflects the total capacity all over Ireland. So I'm just going to pause for a second now. Sorry, it's not pausing, so I'll just have to get a piece of paper here. Sorry about that, but I just want to read a piece here. I don't know why the camera just doesn't pause. Maybe I pressed the wrong button. But read a piece here. And this is from a German outlet written by Donna Leframbros on the 11th of September this year. And it's on Climate Dispatch, which is a skeptical outlet. And it just says here, Greta Germany and a disastrous green energy rollout. That gives a picture of the famous Greta Thunberg. Anyone who still thinks green renewable energy is the answer is invited to click over to web page that just gives it, that monitors Germany's celebrated transition to renewable energy. It's known as Energy Windle. The most recent 6 months update has just been published. Despite the multi-billion euro price tag, Germany's attempts to ditch fossil fuels isn't going very well at all. Right. Only 6 of the transition's goals, 14 goals, only 6 of them, 43%, appear achievable by 2020. Here are the 2 absolute critical data points. Germany's CO2 emission reduction targets won't be met. They have wind turbines everywhere. The CO2 emissions targets will not be met. Its previously robust electricity grid is now vulnerable and insecure. The story of Germany's energy transition boils down to this. Something that used to work well has been deliberately broken, undermined, degraded and crippled. A ton of money has been spent and to make things worse. And we have to realise that money had to be earned somewhere. Somebody had to earn it, and it was probably earned by taxi drivers and people delivering with lorries, all using fossil fuel. Over at Forbes, Michael Schellenberger discusses how the latest report card is being covered in the German press. And in his words, Germany's largest newspaper, Die Welt, summarised the findings of the McKinsey report in a single word: disastrous. He says, there it's there, disastrous. I don't think you can see that, but that's what it is. Germany's electricity prices are 45% above the European average. Germany's green taxes account for 54% of household electricity prices. I'll just read that again. Germany's electricity prices are 45% above European averages, and green taxes account for 54% of household electricity prices. Here in Canada, obviously this is a Canada publication, the media is tripping over itself to publicise the fact that a Swedish 16-year-old will march against climate change in Montreal later this month. This is Greta Thunberg. These news reports don't bother to inform the public that Greta Thunberg is from an extraordinarily dysfunctional family. God help her. That's what it says there. She's from an extraordinarily dysfunctional family, in which children tell adults they aren't permitted to use the toilet. So she's going around telling her parents they can't use the toilet because it's damaging the environment and going to cause, presumably, global warming. Nor do they mention that only way to achieve zero carbon lifestyle is to shut down human civilization. Shut down it all. Shut the whole thing down. Go back to growing carrots with a spade. No more heating, or cooking, or water sanitation, or quality controlled medicine, or refrigeration, or surgery. No more daily transportation to work or school. No more shipping of food from places where it's abundant to places where it's scarce. No more visiting relatives in the hospital, the next town, the next country, or the next continent. These news reports don't bother to mention that Germany is the textbook example of what happens when a nation tries to fight climate change by substituting renewable energy for fossil fuels. Lots of pain, murderous prices, unachievable goals, and increased risk, worry, fear and misery. I'll read that again to you. Lots of pain, murderous prices, unachievable goals, and increased risk, worry, fear and misery. Journalists have no excuse. There is no conceivable reason for them to be unaware of these issues, which means they're either unforgivably lazy or they're deliberately withholding relevant information from the public. And all I'm trying to do here and there are a good few, I think I have 160 viewers for my video on the top of the hill there last Friday. It's only up 2 days less. But what I'm trying to do here is, all I want you to do, please, that's viewing this, spread the word around that we're being lied to big time and we're being fooled big time. And it's disastrous, because if you think of the farmer now trying to get his prices for meat, I mean, if we have to pay murderous high electricity prices to keep all these wind turbines going, there's 5 of them here, and pay them back and all of that, well, it'll keep everything we have. If we worked flat out, we couldn't do it. No matter how much the factory pays us, no matter how we still are faced chasing our tail, because our government will continually to load all these green taxes, green fuel, green everything, and they need to tell us why they want to do it. If the idea is to cut us from using coal, oil and gas, well then they need to say that. If there's going to be no cars, they need to say that. And what it is they seem to be telling us we can go ahead, but we have to be taxed heavily, and we're not achieving our goals. Now, as I said there, we have 3,500 megawatts of wind already, and they're hoping to put up at least 500, if not more. And then they're going for a big solar operation, and then they're going for batteries, and they're going for all this stuff. And then they want electric cars, and we'll deal with them in another article. And nobody has assessed any of this. Article 2.3 of the Article 3.2, I think it is, of the SEA directive is quite clear. This must be assessed from an engineering standpoint, and it's not assessed. But I'll leave you now at that, and thanks for looking in at 15 minutes. That's long enough to be here. I don't like these long videos. They always seem to go longer. But the main reason I'm here is just to convince you that these wind turbines require grid electricity, and the wires that go out to Athlone Power Station also have suppliers coming back in to supply them with electricity from 5 kilometers away, and they'll need that at all times. And if we think that there's 3,500 megawatts, and if they're using even 8%, I mean that's a lot of power being used, being generated, with fuel being imported into this country. And unless there's some reduction somewhere, well then we might be better off with none. I actually believe we were better off with none, and I actually believe that we have to make the link between all of the woes of the country. What we are experiencing here is cultural Marxism, globalization. I won't be surprised as the meat protests continue that it will be discovered that meat is being brought in from Poland and from England and being brought in here and brought out and processed, and all that carry on going on. And we know that our government, the meat owners, have a big grip on government and the politicians, and they are giving the money so they can buy our vote and get us to vote for them with big posters up on election evening time and all that. So we have to think about that. Globalization is going to hit us. We got on very well without it. We're supposed to be in the EU. Now it's the world, and it's growing, and this relates to immigration. The whole of Africa seems to want to come here, the whole of Asia, and we're being in a position where we have no say in anything. We never voted for any of this. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. That's the main point. Wind turbines use a lot of electricity. So thank you, and we'll see you back for the next video soon.